everyone. We're here with Abbie Steiner, and she's going to be presenting today on getting involved in food policy. And I'm just going to make Abbie the presenter so we can see her screen. And this will just take 1 second. And thank you all so much for coming. This is a really exciting opportunity, I feel, because I know that a lot of people that I know and that I'm professionally and personally involved with really would like to be more informed about food policy, including myself. And it's hard to know where to begin. And I think for someone that isn't already tapped in, it's even harder to know where to start to put your energy and get involved. So Abbie, thank you so much for being here. It looks like I can see your screen, but maybe not the bottom part of it, but that's probably okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'll just do a quick little introduction with plantbasedresearch.org. We're hosting Abbie here, and plantbasedresearch.org, if you're not familiar, is an online library of peer-reviewed medical and nutrition evidence relevant to plant-based nutrition. And so we have studies from PubMed tagged by topic and also by study design. So it's really meant to be a resource for both professionals and the public to have better access to information and direct research regarding plant-based diets. So this is not in my field of expertise, and I'm just so happy to know that Abbie's here and can share this with us. And we can go ahead and get started. And Abbie, I wouldn't worry about it. I might see my screen, so you can just, yeah, it looks good.
Great. Well, thanks to Michaela and to Plant-Based Research for having me today. As I already started to talk about, this is me. I'm Abbie Steiner. I'm currently a graduate student at Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy. I'm also doing a graduate degree in public health here at Tufts as well. And I am someone who really cares a lot about food. I'm a gardener. I'm a baker. And I'm a crazy cake maker. But more than that, I'm someone who has had a lot of experience working on the intersection of food and working at the intersection of food and community, and have found that both my love of eating and sharing food can be translated to involvement in making sure that everyone has access to healthy food, that people's food-related needs are met, and that food culture is celebrated. And I had a really unique opportunity this past summer to work with the Union of Concerned Scientists to make the resource that you see on the screen, this toolkit called Healthy Food in Your Community, a toolkit for policy change. And I was qualified to do this because of many years of working on food policy-related issues in a number of different cities, working on healthy food access, working on anti-hunger, working on food-related capacity building, working in sustainable agriculture, and also knowing that just learning through my experiences how much change needs to be made and how much of a need there is for people to actually get involved in food policy change. And so the Union of Concerned Scientists this summer worked to create a resource that would provide the tools for communities to actually engage in change making. So this resource that you see is available on the Union of Concerned Scientists website, and I'll come back to that at the very end, make sure that everyone has the link to that if you haven't accessed this already. But this resource is broken into 5 different parts. It starts by navigating key issues related to healthy food access. It spends some time looking at the policies that affect food in communities. It spends a good chunk of time helping you recognize how food-related policy decisions are made and who's making those decisions. It gives a sense of how important strong relationships are, both with those decision makers and with other stakeholders, how important those relationships are for influencing food policy change, and then it gives some good tips for how to take action on food policy change. And so we're using that resource as a foundation for these 2 trainings. Today's training will focus on exploring resources for tracking food policy. It's important, of course, to know about the main food policy issues and how food policy, what policies are connected to food. Food policy comes up in every space that you might find food. So food policy is connected to the grocery store. It's connected to restaurants. It's on your food label. It's now on menus. Food policy is in schools. Food policy is connected to farms. And food policy is really closely connected to how people access healthy food, especially. And there's so many different ways, so many different policies that are connected to food. There's the obvious ones on the federal level, like the Farm Bill, that is the big, giant piece of legislation related to food and agriculture. But it's also, food comes up in local level planning department policies and in licensing and permitting and zoning. Food is related to how we use land and how we engage in many different aspects of the community. Food policies come up in different regulations and different policies that are standards that are set by organizations. So food is all over the place. Food policy is all over the place, and the issues that you care about might be different. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about all of the many different types of food policies, but that was just meant to give you a little introduction to what might be the area that you could connect to. Before we go into a deeper dive of the resources for how you track food policy, how you learn more about food policy, both at the federal, state, and at the local level, I wanted to, at the very end, we'll spend time talking about some tips to learn more and get engaged. Many of you have already begun asking questions. I wanted to let everyone know that you can type your questions in now, and Michaela's going to keep track of them, and we will spend time at the end going through as many of those questions as we can. So don't hesitate to ask now, and we'll make sure to come back around to those. But before we go any further, it's important to remember that all food policy is local. I'm going to spend a chunk of time talking about how to track federal level food policies, but the Fed seems pretty far away, especially for people that live outside of Washington, even for the people that live inside Washington. As someone who lived there for many years, I recognize that it can seem pretty distant if you're not really engaged in it every day. But all food policy is local because they're happening on that federal level are then implemented in different ways at the state level and also at the local level. And I have a couple of slides here that show how an example like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, what was formerly known as food stamps, how policies related to that play out at every level of government. On the federal level, the Congress makes decisions related to SNAP, but at the state level, state agencies, often health and human service agencies, are responsible for actually implementing the federal government-related initiatives. And in relation to SNAP, the federal government or the state governments authorize SNAP participants and administer the program and ensure that it's successful at their state level. But then at the local level, local departments of public health have opportunities to make the program more effective for residents, whether or not that's through different types of promotional campaigns to ensure that everyone who is eligible for a program like this has access to it or is accessing it. And so in that way, you might not want to engage at the federal level, but this giant federal program there's change being in your community, and you have the opportunity to engage wherever it's most meaningful for you. And with that, we're going to start talking in more detail about the different levels, the different tools that are available for understanding what food policies are being passed and what food policies are being developed. And these are some good online resources that can, if nothing else, help you just see what's going on. So the first place that I always think to go when I'm interested in a food policy-related issue is just congress.gov. This website allows you to search for specific pieces of legislation you can search for keywords. You can look to see what different Congress people are voting on, or what different people are presenting. So I put into the search box nutrition just as a general term to look at, and you can see that in this current Congress, there are 31 bills or 31 pieces of legislation related to nutrition in some way. So this first one that came up, you can see, have a little closer here for you. This was presented 2 weeks ago by a representative from Arizona related to changing some aspects of the food stamp, the SNAP program that I was talking about before. This kind of gives you a sense of the latest actions, who's talking about it. That tracker at the bottom, if you click on this, on the actual number of the bill, it takes you to this page that tells you kind of what's happening with the bill at the time. You have this tracker that kind of tells you where along the line it is. As you can see, this bill has just been introduced, hasn't made it very far. There's also a list of tabs along the bottom that give you more information. Because this bill was introduced, again, just at the beginning of February, there isn't a lot of information here at congress.gov. They're a little slow on the uptake sometimes, but you can go through and find out, this is the summary. This is, if you click on co-sponsors, you're able to see the other Congress people that are supporting it. But I also like to go here to the site. This is called govtrack.us, and this is a non-governmental website, but it's devoted to doing a similar thing that Congress.gov is doing, but it actually provides a little bit more information. So I typed in that bill that we were looking at on the Congress.gov website, the HR 733, and it gives you this page, kind of a summary page that tells you what's happening with it. It gives you a sense of who this person is. You can learn more about Matt Salmon, and you can actually click on the text to find out what the bill entails. They also have on all of their pages this prognosis of whether or not this bill can be enacted. My personal opinion is that this bill isn't a very good bill, so the fact that there's a 0% chance of being enacted is probably a good thing from my perspective. I recognize my liberal bias, but I think that that's a useful tool. You get more sense about what the bill is about, what the title is. It tells you also related bills, so it turns out that this same congressperson introduced a very similar version of this bill in the last Congress. So it seems to be something that this congressperson cares a lot about. So this is all on the main page of this specific bill. You have a similar tracker to the one that was presented on congress.gov, but this one is a little bit more dynamic. You can't see it now because this screen is static, but it shows you that it was just introduced. It gives you a sense of where it stands. It has a little bit more detail under the prognosis about where this might go.
Oh, Abby, can I interrupt you for 1 sec? Maybe for some of the static slides, if you're talking about specific links that you don't have, maybe you can use your mouse to show people what you mean. And then just so you know, some people, the bottom and the right side of the screen is cut off a little bit, which I've been checking. It seems like it's been fine. Everyone can be reassured. I don't think you've missed anything. So it should be fine, but if you do refer to something like way at the bottom, you might need to just tell people that that's where it is.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure why that's happening, just so that everyone knows. But at the very bottom of the slide is mainly just the website that we're referring to, and we'll be sure to share all of these websites afterward. So on the right side of the screen, hopefully you can see this. There's a little section that goes into more detail about the prognosis, and it has a very low chance of getting past committee and even lower chance of being enacted, and it tells you a little bit more why you can kind of learn why that's happening at the bottom there. It's largely because very few bills were enacted at all, whether or not they were related to food or nutrition. So those are just general tracking of bills as they're being developed. The next place to go for federal level regulations is regulations.gov. This website has a lot of really excellent information regarding a lot of regulations that have, or a lot of bills that have already been passed or that are in a different point in the process, and you're able to actually engage more actively from this website. This is the homepage, regulations.gov. Their focus is on enabling people to participate in the development of regulations once they've been passed into law. So you have the opportunity to actually engage and participate in the conversation. Again, I just search for nutrition under this search, on this search page, and you can see there's a lot of different stock terms that come up when you start to type nutrition. So you get to nutrition, there's food and nutrition service, nutrition education, supplemental nutrition assistance program. Those are just some general things that have the term nutrition in them. And if you click on search, you'll get to this regulations page. And there was one regulation that I thought was interesting. There's this child and adult care food program, meal pattern revisions related to the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act. This is exciting because I don't know if you can see all the way to the right.
We can see where I can see where it says comment. I think some people it's not cut off as much as mine, so just
right.
You can narrate.
Sure. So all the way to the right on this page, it tells you that you can actually comment now, which is an exciting thing. And to do that, you just click on the blue title of the regulation, and that takes you to this regulation page, which gives you a little bit more information about what's included in this bill, and it also gives you the full text of the regulation that's being considered. So this particular rule is proposing changes in the Child Care Food Program, also known as TACFP, and this program predominantly caters to children in day or out-of-school time care. And the goal of this rule is to mandate nutrition improvements to the current meal patterns for these programs better align with the nutrition standards updates that went into effect for the National School Lunch Program as a part of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act, which was passed in 2010. So for parents with children in programs receiving some amount of funding or support through this child and adult care food program, advocating for stronger nutrition standards might be a high priority. And if this was you could actually comment. You could actually comment now. Again, you have that blue comment now button on the right. If your screen is cut off right, it's over here on the kind of top right. And that takes you to a page where you actually get to share your opinion, and that information is then shared with whichever agency is working on that. This is part of the Food and Nutrition Service, which is connected to which is a part of the United States Department of Agriculture. So your comment will go to the administrators at the Food and Nutrition Service who are working on this bill, and that will help them make decisions about, this regulation will help make decisions about where to go, which is pretty exciting. And I think not enough people know that they have the opportunity to actually to share their voice in federal policy making in this way. So back to this search page, related to nutrition, there are 51 regulations that are open. You can comment on them now. So over here on the left, you can kind of see the different types of documents. But I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that when you search nutrition, you get 9,062 results, and that's a lot of results. And if you're just generally interested in nutrition, this might not be the best way to find policies that you might want to speak out on. But I thought I would bring up an example that I've been tracking pretty closely. Last year about this time, the Food and Drug Administration proposed an update to the nutrition facts label. And the nutrition facts label is something that everyone knows. It's on every food package for the most part. It's been on every food package for the past 20 years. And there have been some strong efforts to some changes to that. And you can actually see here this on the left is the current nutrition facts label, and on the right is the proposed changes that the FDA presented in about a year ago. So if you wanted to learn more about where in the process the FDA was in making these changes, you could, again, go back to regulations.gov. I've spent a lot of time looking at this, so I knew that proposed rules on food labeling would actually get us pretty close. So this takes us to the food labeling revision of the nutrition and supplement facts labels docket. This is where all the information related to changing the nutrition facts label is housed. And you can see on the right here, if you can't see it, there have been 287 and 889,000 comments submitted about this topic. That is a lot. Just under 300,000 comments have been submitted related to the food and nutrition and the updates to the nutrition facts label, and that's pretty cool to know that so many different types of people, so many different stakeholders felt it was important to speak out on this issue. And if you go actually deeper into the document, you see that there's actually only 516 unique public submissions. That really high number, that just under 300,000, comes from the fact that many people submitted very similar results. So for example, there was a petition from one organization that got 90,000 submissions, and then another one from another organization that had 20,000 submissions. So all those numbers add up to that just under 300,000. But 516 unique results is still a lot of unique opinions related to these issues. The Union of Concerned Scientists, where I worked this summer, submitted a couple of different exhibits for the FDA to think about. Again, they were one of the ones you can see here that had 23,000 form letters related to specifically to the added sugar label. I'll go back, I'll show you that one difference. Here, the FDA has suggested that we should add a separate line on the nutrition facts label that lets people know how much sugar was added to their to the food that they're consuming. So that it turns out got a lot of heat. There were a lot of organizations like the Union of Concerned Scientists who felt like that was a great thing. This is a great public health. They argued that this is their comment. They argued this was an important public health measure, ensuring that people better understand what they're eating. This tells you a little bit more about how many comments were there. This counted as 325 comments because 325 people signed on to this letter. But this was, the public health community spoke in one way. Some other organizations within the public health community had different opinions about this. Food industry had some pretty strong opinions about this. Some different governments had strong opinions about this. And if nothing else, it's just really interesting to be able to go back to all of these results and look through to see who cares about these issues and what are they saying. And if I wanted to engage in change related to this issue, who would I need to be building relationships with to actually influence some type of change, which is another really great reality of this particular resource. But I was able to go through in more detail about the nutrition facts label because it's something that I've been following very closely. And if you're generally just interested in some of the key issues related to food policy that are on the national stage right now, this organization, Food Policy Action, has some really great resources that can help you navigate navigate the issues related to food policy on the national scale and see how different legislators are actually voting on the issues that you might care about. This organization was established in 2012 through a collaboration of national food policy leaders in order to hold legislators accountable on votes that have an effect on food and farming. So there is some bias here, and so they're determining what they think are good or bad policies, and I'll show you that in a second. But they focus on a wide range of issues that are connected to food, including the Farm Bill, animal welfare and antibiotics, biofuels, food safety, sustainability, food labeling, hunger, child nutrition, and many more. You have on their main page, this is just, again, Food Policy Action, foodpolicyaction.org. On their main page, they have this map of the United States, and you can click on any state. You might want to click on the state that you live in to see how legislators are voting on the issues that you care about. I grew up in Colorado, so I clicked on Colorado to see what Colorado politicians are, how they're voting. Granted, this has not been updated since the most recent election, so we'll have to recognize that this will probably go through some changes as this new Congress gets running. But you can see the kind of the voting patterns of the different of whatever state you live in, of your representatives and of your senators. And some of these, the percents reflect how well they vote on the issues that Food Policy Action is caring about. And you can look in even more detail at how they vote on specific bills. So this just shows how two different politicians in Colorado vote on two different sets of bills. Granted, one is a representative and one is a senator, so the bills are a little different. But that is an interesting tool also, and you have the option to see what it means to vote yes on this particular bill, and what it means why this one is green and why this one is red. And some of that you see here. They have the different votes that the 113th, the House votes from the 113th Congress. And so in some cases, voting for the bill is a bad thing. So in the first one, the Food Policy Action felt like the first bill, the Waters of the United States Regulatory Overreach Protection Act, wasn't a good thing to vote for, whereas this Grayson Food Safety Inspection Amendment they did feel was a good thing to vote for. The reason that I like this resource is, if nothing else, they do a really great job of aggregating current federal food policy issues, and they let you, it's an easy way to navigate what might be happening and what your representatives might be, how they might be voting, which then gives you the opportunity to reach out to your senator or to your representative to say, I think that maybe you need to change your mind, or to cheer them on for the way that they vote on these issues. So that was a pretty quick run-through of a bunch of great federal resources. Additional federal resources include the Federal Register, which is the kind of publishing arm of the federal government. They're always publishing the new laws, new bills, and anything else that is occurring, because they're required to do so. They're required to publish what's happening in congressional committees. They're required to publish decisions that are being made. That tool is a little harder to navigate, so it's definitely one that you want to use when you know exactly what you're looking for, less so when you generally are interested in learning about a broader issue. Some of the other resources that I already spoke about are better for that. Learning more about how different federal agencies are connected to food issues is also helpful. I talked a little bit about the FDA already. I mentioned the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They're very, as their name suggests, working on agricultural issues, and the FDA is working on legislation related to somewhat to food safety, and that responsibility is shared also with the USDA. And then both the Health and Human Services and CDC, as the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention as part of Health and Human Services, they also look a lot at the connection between food and health, and they have a lot of good information on their websites as well. And then learning about we're going to talk more about this in our next session, but the decision makers that are most powerful are the ones that are voting on the different committees that are working on food policy issues. So knowing more about who's on different legislative committees, both at the federal level but also at the state level, can help you better understand who you might want to be connecting with to try to accomplish the goals that you are hoping to accomplish. So we're going to move now to the more state-focused level. One of my favorite resources comes from the Rudd Center for Food Policy and Obesity. This acronym Academic Center used to be located, housed at Yale, and their website is actually still yaleredcenter.org. But as of January, the beginning of January, they moved to the University of Connecticut, and they have a strong focus on research related to obesity and food, and the Red Center seeks to improve the world's diet, prevent obesity, and reduce weight stigma by establishing creative connections between science and public policy, developing targeted research, encouraging frank dialogue amongst key constituents, and expressing a dedicated commitment to real change. And this is a leader, and they're a leader in building broad-based consensus to change diet and activity patterns. And they do a lot of work to hold industry and government agencies accountable for safeguarding public health when it comes to food. So they have, on their website, they have a legislation database, which I find is very helpful, very useful. If you go to their legislation database, you can search for federal-related bills, but you also can search for bills at your state, at your state level. And they have a long list of issue areas that you could be searching about. So if the thing that you know you want to be working on is preschool nutrition, that kind of goes back to the child and adult care food program regulation that I had showed before. If you know that that's what you care about, you can click that. I just chose Michigan and access to healthy food, and at the very bottom of the page, what comes up is are any current bills related to access to healthy food in the state of Michigan. And this is what I just put at the top is what comes up at the bottom. They have a bill now called the Program to Improve Dietary Intake and Increase Physical Activity. And you have the option to learn more about that bill by clicking on it. And this gives you a summary of what's in that bill, and it tells you its status. It turns out that this bill was passed into law and adopted this past summer. So that's a great success. This organization also has a number of publications, so this is a great way to learn about current research related to food and obesity policy, chronic disease policy, and you have the ability, again, to search by topic, to search by author, to search by year, and they give you access to these peer-reviewed journal articles, which you don't always have access to, which makes this another really great resource, especially for those of you that's part of the reason why you're so interested in plant-based research. Knowing more, this gives you an opportunity to know more. They also have a number of policy briefs and reports that can help you, again, if you're interested in there's this option down here about improving school food standards. This policy brief would give you some tools for engaging in improving school food standards in your community. That's a resource that I really love. Another great resource is from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. They have their chronic disease state policy tracking system, which is similar to the Rudd Center's legislative database. As it says here, it's a system that contains over 5,500, though you'll see it's actually 5,870 policies related to chronic disease prevention and health promotion. And they similarly have a bunch of filter options. So you can search by legislation, you can search by regulation, you can search by state, you can search by the health category that you care about, you can search by the policy topics that interest you, you can search by the setting, where the food-related setting, whether or not what the status of the bill is, whether it was enacted or whether it's dead or not going to be enacted, and then you can also search by year. This website also is lagging behind a little bit, but I've noticed they continue to update it. So you get, when you search, you see the titles of the bills and the states and the health category and the policy topics. Those are all these different columns. And then they have a couple more columns related to the type, the setting, status, and the year. So this is another good tool if you're just interested in seeing what's happening related to, let's say, school and after school related policies in the state of Florida. you have the option to search that here. So I think that this is a good tool for that reason. But another really great place to look is just at, if you're interested in seeing what's happening in your state, you can look at your state legislator's website. So I just chose a couple of states off the top of my head. This is the state of Idaho's main page. If you go to, I want to say that it's idaho.gov, you get this main page, and you can see that they have front and center this bill center. And the bill center, that's usually what you want to look for, is a bill center or current legislation or bills, something that allows you to search for bills. So this, if you click on that bill center, you get this bar at the bottom that lets you search the current session related to the topic that you're interested in. So I typed in food. That's usually, when I don't have a specific topic, that's usually where I start. And it brought up a bunch of different documents related to food. So this first bill that's listed here, it has to do with food safety and in-home kitchens. This is the state of Massachusetts website. Similar, right in the center there, you have keywords or bill numbers that you can search. Again, I searched for food. If you can see right here, I searched for food. So there's 492 results related to food. If you have a little bit more specific of a search, you get more narrow results, obviously. But this is the state website, and you can just search the statutes here at the top, which I did, and you get food, and you get 470 returns. So that's another way to look to see what's happening in your state. Another really excellent resource comes out of the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. They have a center called the Center for a Livable Future. And the Center for a Livable Future has a project that's focused on food policy, which they call their Food Policy Network. And you actually can get here just by going to foodpolicynetworks.org. That takes you to this page. And you have a bunch of different things that you can be doing here on this website. They have two resources in particular that I think are interesting. They have a Food Policy Council Directory and a Food Policy Resource Database. So first of all, we're going to look at the resource database. This is a really exciting tool. This is kind of a crowdsourced tool where anything that's been published by a city or a town or a community related to making food policy change, Johns Hopkins has spent a lot of time and done a lot of work to gather those documents and house them in a central place. So you have the option to learn a number of different learn about a number of different things. You see on the left here, there's a set of filters that you can use. You can filter by topic, by document type, by organizational tool, by jurisdiction, by geography. If you want to focus on one, if you live in a certain type of community, you can look for policies and resources related to municipalities, or you can look for the ones that are more related to states or towns, and all of those things are really helpful. They also, like I mentioned, have this Food Policy Council directory, and Food Policy Councils are such a phenomenal resource that everyone who is interested in engaging in food policy change needs to learn more about whether or not there's a food policy acting in their community. These bodies, sometimes located in a city, a county, or a state government, sometimes they're located at universities, or they're run independently through a nonprofit organization. These are all designed to bring together interested people from diverse quarters to shape regional and local food systems. And the food policy councils are designed to shape relationships between the important decision makers and also important stakeholders. And the Center for a Livable Future at Johns Hopkins has done a really great job of making sense of who's actually working on food policy organizing, and this current directory, which they I think that they finished updating this past summer, has 272 different policy councils listed for the United States and Canada. And if you go to this says a little bit more about the directory. If you go to any of these specific listings, I clicked on the Alaska Food Policy Council, and it gives you just a little bit of information who you can talk to, and it gives you the option to visit their website, which I did, and this, if nothing else, is a beautiful graphic, and got me excited about getting involved in Alaska food policy. So I always recommend that people turn to the Food Policy Council to see who's doing what, who is on the council, what's the work that's being done, how do I get involved if I'm just a normal citizen living in an Alaskan community somewhere. All of that information should be housed here on this website. I also looked to see another council. This is the Milwaukee Food Council. I just looked to see, you know, they have these. They say that they have meetings every other month, and that's probably that's always a really excellent way to find out firsthand what's happening and how you can get involved, actually going and talking with some of the other people that, like you, care about these issues. So let me see. The other thing that's really unique about the Johns Hopkins Center for a Livable Future and the work that they're doing related to food policies is if you go onto their directory, onto this page, and you search for you click your state, and it brings up all the results from your state, and you find that there really isn't a council that encompasses the community that you live in. You can reach out to the Center for a Livable Future, and they will provide you with the resources and the tools to help you move in the direction of starting a council that could be better representing the food and food system needs of your community, which I think is really excellent. Keep going. So some additional places to look for food policy related information on the local level. Some governments have food-related government offices. The City of Baltimore, they have a really excellent team that's a partnership between the Mayor's Office and the Office of Planning. I feel like there are a couple of other really great partners involved there too, and they work on important healthy food access and food-related zoning in Baltimore, along with a number of other policy issues. Boston also, the former mayor of Boston, Mayor Menino, was what some people refer to as the mayor of food. He really cared about these food issues, and there was a strong team working on food-related issues. I think that there's been some transition with the new mayor, so I'll have to check back and see how that might be changing. But just checking in with your mayor, with your council member, with your representatives to see, you know, what might be happening related to food in your community. The thing that's funny about the local level is, unlike the national level, where I took you through all of these pretty well-developed resources to help you find information related to what's happening on legislation and policy related to food, at the local level, there aren't, those formal structures don't exist in every place. But the thing that's so great about the local level is you're so much closer to the action, and if you want to learn more about what might be happening in your community, you can reach out to your council member, your policymaker, your local representative. You can call their office, and someone in their office will be able to talk to you about whether or not your council person is the right person to talk to. They're going to be able to give you the tools to connect with the right people, which is such an exciting thing. And it's a lot harder to actually reach your federal representatives, but the local representatives are much more present and able to participate in helping you engage in this. Cooperative extensions operating out of land-grant universities have a lot of great resources, often related to food policy. So checking with the main state or land-grant institution in your area to see what type of resources they might have. Other governing bodies, regional, geographic, tribal, a lot of these will want to be talking about food policy, will want to engage with you about food policy. Many nonprofit organizations that work on food engage in food policy change, whether it's hunger issues or urban agriculture or just general agriculture. All of these organizations, they have a stake in engaging in policy change and might have an opportunity for you to participate with them. Planning departments are becoming more and more an important part of food policy, as how we use land and how we engage in space. is inextricably linked to food. A lot of communities have community development corporations that care about food issues. So connecting with the leaders in your community, all of these people might be able to help you to learn more about what's happening. So just some general tips for staying up to date on legislative issues. Social media turns out to be a really great way to learn about food issues. You can follow your representatives on Twitter or on Facebook. They often are reporting pretty regularly, and Twitter and Facebook are both pretty low maintenance. It's pretty easy for them to keep those updated, again, as opposed to those pretty formal platforms that we looked at before. We're going to talk more about this next time, but you can actually explore the specific activities of legislative committees to see how decisions are being made. But then you also have the option to see what are people writing about food, and there's some really great resources related to food and food issues, food politics. Civil Eats, this website is a great blog related to food systems and having an informed conversation about food systems, and they have a whole section devoted to food policy. The Food Tank is another one. They're talking a lot about food entrepreneurship and food business and a number of other important food issues, but they have a stake in food policy change as well. Food Politics is a great resource. Dr. Marion Nessel, she's based at NYU and is a pretty well-known voice in food policy. She's writing pretty regularly about the key national issues related to food politics. And as a Tufts student and a big fan of Professor Park Wilby, he's also very knowledgeable on food policy issues and is writing regularly about them on his blog. So I think the most important things before I turn it over to you for some questions, the next steps for getting involved in food policy, in addition to thinking in a little bit more detail about what you care about and how you want to engage, it's the next best thing is to find out what's happening in your community, and you can do that by connecting with your food policy council, by connecting with the organizations that are working on food issues, and see what actions are happening related to the food topics that interest you. And then it seems like it would be a silly thing not to encourage you to join us again in a month to learn more about the next steps for really engaging in food policy change. And in part 2 of this series, we're going to talk more about connecting with decision makers and building the strong relationships that will enable you to take action for food policy change.
Great. Thank you so much, Abbie. I hope you're taking a sip of water after talking so much for an hour. So this was all great information. We have a number of questions to address. And just one thing before we go any further, our next webinar is actually March 11th.
March 11th.
So
don't come
on the 18th. Come on the 11th. You'll get reminders, though. So there's a bunch of questions people have typed in. And I wanted to start, I guess, I'm going to start with a question, a general question of mine, just to clarify something which I think will help with the other questions. You had mentioned before that some of the government bodies, I guess, track unique responses, and then they also track the number of aggregate responses under a certain topic. And I just wondered, for people interested in being part of the dialogue on a national level, how does it differ to be, say you're on an email list and you get an email, oh, this bill is coming up, click here to send this message to your representative, or to comment on this, and you send a pre-formatted comment and it gets slotted with a group of other, like the 90,000 that you mentioned, versus what does it mean to individually post a comment yourself that may or may not be similar to those 90,000 people, and kind of what's the deal with all that?
That's a really great question. I don't have a straightforward answer for you. I think, unfortunately, it's not entirely clear how different agencies weight the volume of replicated responses versus unique responses. I spent a lot of, going back to the nutrition facts label, I spent a lot of time looking through the unique responses related to added sugar for a project that I did last semester. And you can tell that some comments where people have a very clearly state the issue that they have and give good reasoning for the changes that they're suggesting. So I think that more than anything, a well-formed, direct, succinct, and easily readable comment is probably more important than anything else. I think that there is a lot of value in for example, the FDA getting 90,000 of the same comment. But for them to really be able to think about how to make changes, I think that having a unique contribution, even if you're saying similar things to other organizations or other individuals, your voice can really matter, and you have that opportunity to do that. So I think it's worthwhile to try to take that opportunity if you can. I think that a lot of times for the forms, like sign here to get another letter to this agency, you have the option to add in your own message, and I think that it's valuable, if nothing else, to take that option. So.
Okay, great. So this kind of leads into Kirsty Dyer's question. You kind of just spoke about this a little bit, but if you have anything to add, what good does commenting do if the site is getting thousands of comments? So does it even matter at all to be part of national dialogue and the commenting on these bills?
I think that is a really great question. In terms of, back to, again, the example that I've used already, the nutrition facts label, just on 300,000 comments, at a certain point, there isn't a lot of new information to share. But that 300,000 comments, that's not happening on every bill. And back to that, the first bill that I pointed to related to updating the nutrition standards for the child and adult care food program, the comment period is still open, but they 200 comments. So adding your voice to something like that, where it's an issue that you care about that might not be as popular, as well publicized, you really can have an impact if you're sharing your voice on issues that you really care about. So if the food label, that's something that everyone is talking about, but not everyone is talking about the child and adult care food program nutrition updates, and those are just as important for impacting nutrition and health at an early childhood level. So you may choose not to voice your opinion on some of those bigger issues that your opinion has been voiced many times by many other organizations and many other people, but on some of the other issues where your voice will be unique, I think it's worth it to definitely spend the time getting your voice out there.
Thank you. And can you say anything about the process? There's also a question, who sifts through all these comments to find the good ones or the unique ones? Who is doing this when we send these comments in? It's like going into an anonymous hole and they come out the other side and organized in this great way, but is it, who is the staff, or what is that process?
So that's another really great question that I can only give you what my sense is of that, because I also find that black hole to be a little bit confusing. Each agency has laws that are required by law to review every comment and in a certain amount of time. So, for example, the Food and Drug Administration, if you send someone an email related to that nutrition facts, I sent them an email related to the nutrition facts label comments, and they're required by law to get back to that email within 24 hours. So someone responded to me with a very well composed answer to my question within 24 hours. Whether or not that translates to how those comments are organized is not entirely clear to me. All I know is that it's by law the public has to be able to comment, and by law agencies have to consider the comments in order to before they move forward with any type of regulation. That being said, a lot if you went back and looked through the details of who commented on the nutrition label regulation. There are a lot of food industries commenting. There are a lot of other big industries. There are a lot of big government people commenting on it. So whether or not those voices are more powerful, I don't know. I want to be optimistic and think that each one counts equally. But I think if that's not the case, having more voices, what we can do is we have power in numbers. I think it's important to recognize that. But back to whether or not how that information is organized and sifted, each agency has teams that whoever is working on that is responsible for going through those documents and keeping them public. But that's all that I know about that.
Great. That's really helpful. It seems like from what you've been talking about today that part of the opportunity is engaging in the national dialogue in a more formal way with these opportunities for public comment, and then also to a great extent with the state level. But then, and I'm excited for part 2 because I know you're going to talk more about the relationship mapping and kind of acting, I think, and doing it, but also in terms of the local level, because I know a lot of people are probably interested in that just to revisit the point you made at the beginning, that if you're interested in getting involved in food policy at the local level, being informed about the national and the state process and what's current and what's recently been passed can help you to frame what you're planning on doing or what you're maybe approaching a decision maker with in your school system or your community, and to help them be more informed and sort of to lend some credibility and support to the direction that you'd like to go in or propose. And I think that's really, really empowering and really important. So just a couple more questions from people before we close. How can your opinions make a difference if your representatives don't agree with your views and vote in the opposite direction almost always?
Well, that goes back to basic, that's just about democracy. If your representatives aren't voting in the way that represent your views, we have to work to elect different representatives. And I know that is much easier said than done, but that is the value of engaging in the democratic process and voting for representatives that you feel can better represent you, and holding them accountable if they don't represent you when they said that they would. And that's just back to all of us needing to stay civically engaged. And that's one reason why food is such a great entry point, because it's an issue that people care about, and it's an issue that that we can all attach meaning to. So it's a great way to start the conversation. But it is just generally about how we all need to take our part in our democratic society to ensure that it's actually doing for us what we hope that it will do.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess we can't really, we can't always expect that we'll get exactly what we want, but being committed to staying engaged and involved is our best chance for promoting the values and the views that we feel are important. So that's why I feel like this is so useful, because I just learned a lot in the last hour, so I really appreciate it, Abbie. It's awesome. One final question: what do you think about the social media food industry shaming techniques done by bloggers like Food Babe? I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Food Babe. I think I don't have a good response to that. I think that I'll have to think more about that and maybe get back to that question.
All right, sounds good. Oh, okay, here, another question. What cities would you say have had the greatest progress in terms of implementing progressive food policies?
So that is a great question. I think that there are some obvious examples that we hear a lot about. New York City has done a lot of really great work related to making food accessible and healthier, and they've had a lot of really big public health wins. They've had some big public health losses, and their struggle is pretty nationally televised. Los Angeles is another example of a city that has done really great work. A lot of the work that when it's inspired by a key decision maker, usually as a result of the interest of the community. But in Los Angeles, the governor, along with a number of key stakeholders, recognized that making change around food procurement and how dollars are spent on food could really change the food system for the better. But those are just two examples that are pretty often are televised or are publicized, and I think that there's a lot happening again on the local level that just isn't covered in the same way that some of these bigger cities might see coverage. So I think that there have been a lot of cities that have made small changes or even big changes using a number of different policy tools. I think cities that think about food in terms of how they plan, how they create strategic plans for the coming years, for the next 10 years, the next 20 years, incorporating food and health into those plans reflects a really important forward-thinking outlook. And I think that there's just so much potential and there's so much work being done really in every community, whether it's in schools or in on farms or in how people make choices about the food that they or just where food is and how we access healthy food. There's just a lot happening, and I think that I kind of turn it to you all to look and see and celebrate the success that's happening in your community.
Thanks, Abbie. All right, I think we're going to close. It's been an hour. Thank you all so much for coming. I would also like to remind you again that our part 2 is on March 11th. And Abbie, can you give us like a brief teaser about what you'll be talking about in the next session?
Yes. So just so that you can see, I put up this last slide of how to access the Union of Concerned Scientists food policy toolkit. But in the next session, we're going to focus on recognizing how food-related decisions are made and recognizing who is a part of not only decision makers, not only people that are elected and have the power to make decisions, but also all of the important stakeholders that help create change or stand in the way of creating change, and recognizing who those people are so that you're better able to position yourself to get involved in food policy change. So I look forward to that opportunity to learn more.
Great, thank you. And so we'll be emailing out the recording of this. May take a few days, but we will get it out to you, as well as a shortened version of the slides, and then the link for this toolkit, which is the document that this presentation is based on. And this is what Abbie authored this past summer for the Union of Concerned Scientists. So for those of you who are ready to get started and be commenting on all these national and state level food bills, I would also encourage you to turn to plantbasedresearch.org for some evidence-based information to be able to inform your comments with, so that really if you're approaching representatives and leaders with opinions, that they are backed by evidence and that you can refer them to the research that we have, and we have a lot of it. So thank you all again so much for coming. We'll look forward to March 11th, and if you know people who you think might enjoy it, feel free to send the email link and bring them along. I don't think that they have to have been here today to get a lot out of the next session. So we're going to end there. And